for the people that are kind of new to this, these black people being indigenous on, in America. Could you please paint a picture of like pre-colonialism, how we were, what we were doing, colonialism, and like we said earlier, how we died, by the pen. Could you kind of
Right.
like walk us through that whole process?
So, before the conquistadors came in search of the gold and the wealth of the land, the way that we were living was under matriarchal rules, right? And we all had family banks. We didn't have a centralized banking system. And that's what they captured the banking system with the bank robberies, the Billy the Kids and the Bonnie and Clydes. Those were all staged robberies and for the purposes of seizing our banks, right? So the people start listening to the people that came in, telling them how to centralize the banking system. And this was warned against by the founding fathers. But before they came, we didn't have war over here. We didn't have prison over here. We had every shade of people. That's why it's called the Great Melding Pot over here. And we didn't get involved in the skirmishes that took place on the other lands across the water, right? But then they involved us when they came here in 1492. They actually came in the 1100s to scout the land. And once they seen they was losing the war in Europe, they decided to come and sack our land. So they gave us a Bible, and the Bible was the beginning of our downfall. So the appearance of legitimacy using the paperwork of an interim government is what's been keeping us in bondage. Their book say that we have to be freed from the law and delivered unto grace. And the grace is the royal noble character of the people, And so in order to be released from the law, you have to find your sovereign capacity. So what do we use for references? The Dred Scott case. They said that Dred Scott was 3/5 of a human being, and that's why a black man had no rights that a white man was bound to respect. What we didn't know at that time was when they say a white man, they talking about the royal family of Europe that came over here with the conquistadors as the attackers in a fifth dimensional chess game known as a Conjuring War, right? So when they came over here, they locked us down using the paper chains, and the paper chains is called adhesion contracts. So they use their the story of the Mayflower. The Mayflower's real original name was called the good ship Plymouth. So Malcolm said that we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. What is he talking about? He's talking about the allegation on the world court that we crashed our landmass into the good ship Plymouth. They changed the name from Plymouth to Mayflower, right? So this is a cover-up. They wrote the contract in the blood of Chris Atticus because the blood of the righteous shall not be spilled to pain, and they're using this Babylonian money magic to counter the contract. And the contract is called a constitution. And it's a secondary constitution to the original constitution that was governed by the people of the land. So this is how they came in and swindled us out of everything with adhesion contracts.
Okay, so that's it's interesting because we don't hear about none of this. You know what I'm saying? We don't hear, nobody has a claim, but at the same time, a lot of us as black people, we're quote unquote African Americans, a lot of them are saying, oh, my grandma said I was Cherokee. Oh, my grandma said I was Choctaw, and et cetera. We're like, and we're thinking that, we like the Indian power people on, like on what's that show? The Lone Ranger. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Tonto and all that. Yeah, Tonto.
Tonto, a Spanish word, means stupid.
Mm. That makes more sense. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? But so basically, what you're saying is that a lot of us here that we're already here, all these tribes you're talking about look like well woolly-haired individuals that look like me and you, correct?
No, not all of them.
Well, yeah.
You
Mm,
had tribes that were of Asian descent,
mm,
but most of them was from the West Coast, South
mm,
Pacific coastline,
mm,
because we used to do trade with Asia on the West Coast of the United
mm,
States with both China and Japan long before Columbus ever came.
mm,
They found those ships from those traders that we used to trade in goods and services for. And we also traded wives among the royal families to make
mm,
political and family ties and to give us a union across the water, right?
mm,
Same thing on the other side, on the East Coast, we was trading with African nations hundreds of years, thousands of years before Columbus ever came.
mm,
So that tell us out the gate that that's a bullshit story,
mm,
that Columbus didn't know where he was going,
mm,
right? They
mm,
calling us Indians because he thought he was going to India, but India wasn't India yet. So what the
mm,
fuck is we talking about,
mm,
right?
mm,
India was Hindustan,
mm,
right?
mm,
And so where's we getting this Indian shit from?
mm,
Then they gave us the other titles, the Negroes, the Moors. None of those are self-identifying terms. When you let your enemy define who you are, then you become your enemy's servant,
mm,
right? So you have to make your own proclamation as to who you are. You got to go from 3/5 compromised,
mm,
right? Because you compromise when you in incompetent status in law.
mm.
But when you fully realize, you 5/5. Once you 5/5, you are a whole. And now they don't have jurisdiction over you because you can see they whole shenanigans for what it is. That's why you never see, like for instance, my field of study was law, medicine, and history,
Mhm,
right? So what do the law got to do with history? What do the history got to do with medicine? And what do the medicine got to do with the law?
mhm,
So when you start going through it, you see that they speaking in terms that on purpose using foreign languages to speak over the head of the common people, so that we can't really understand what we getting ourselves into when we making these contracts with them. And then they give us an overload of data to absorb in order to know, make a competent decision. So we just accept the adhesion contract, which is holding them in power.
Um, Another interesting point I always see, like you said, I remember you was breaking it down about what you said, mirror tribes, right?
Yep.
Um, because whenever I look at ancient Tamaray or Kemet, whatever you want to call it, and I look at you know some Native Americans, I see the feathers, then I see a namuz. You know what I'm saying? I see an apron. You know what I'm saying? I see totem poles. I see obelisks. Um, was the connection from there to how did they intermingle? How did they have the similarities?
The similarities of the mirror tribes is that they come from a same custom,
Mm,
right? And the reason why you have mirror tribes, so if one tribe loses a part of the history, they can look at the mirror tribes' customs and traditions and remember what they lost,
mm,
right? When you over here, when you like a Mississippian, one of the oldest tribes, and you looking across multiple cultures, you can read all of the cultures simultaneously together, and that's going to show you that what's going on the land by frequency and vibration of the people.
mm. And as far as like I was going back earlier about like painting the picture, because I see these different, like in Georgia, for example, we have the Etowah mounds that are right up above Atlanta, and it's right on the river. I'm seeing all these mounds all over America. You know what I mean? So, and I saw there's another big one in I think it was St. Louis. I haven't been there yet, but
They
I'm
all
in
over.
there. Yeah, they're all over. And I personally I had the experience to go to Teotihuacan. You know what I'm saying? And seeing the sun and the moon pyramid. And and I saw brothers on the walls that look like me and you just sitting there doing their thing.
Yeah.
So is it going back to like a timeline? What time are we talking about as far as these us being here on this continent, building and the beginning of it
Look,
and kind of like the downfall.
look at the Emerald Tablets of Thoth.
Mm-hmm.
3,600 years ago, Thoth was instructed by his father to go and civilize that portion of the land called Egypt
Mm-hmm.
today,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's 36,000 years ago. That's two, what they call precession cycles back. Now, the complex is there to tell the people over here something, because this is where the Sphinx is looking at. It's looking over here, right? So if the Sphinx is looking over here, what is her posture saying? She waiting. What's she waiting on? She waiting on the master to come with a lion's paw and the master's grip and raise her from her state. And a Sphinx in flight is called a griffin, right? And the griffin is the eagle-headed lion, right? And the eagle head is represented by the chief. And the chiefs lead out in representing of the matriarchs, because the chief that advocate the matriarchal restoration is the one who understands that the land cannot be sold. It can only be contracted until the Jubilee year. This is the Jubilee year. So now we follow the Indigenous Rights Acts, United Nations, Indigenous Rights Act, United States, and we follow the FEMA document for continuity of government. We understand that they have to destroy all GMO foods. So you see in all of these food places been being destroyed for the last 2 years, ever since destroying GMOs, because in the new cycles, we will not allow GMOs to be entered into the food chain for people or animals. We want to go back to the organic living by restoring the land and then living off the land by restoring it. The land gonna take care of all our needs as long as we take care of the land, right? And all this land is tribal land. And even DC, because we staked the totem pole in DC to commemorate the 400 years, then they marched the totem pole for 400 miles, 1 mile to the year, right? And then they staked it in DC because that was the so-called crime scene that was classified as a independent city state.
Okay. Yeah, that that makes perfect sense. Like I said, I've been ever since I've been we talked about this prior, ever since I've been talking. If some of y'all look back at my other video, I had a good bill with the brother Dr. Gabriel Hernandez L, and he started talking about I think the name of it was "We Came Before Columbus." We kind of building on that now. Yeah. That's what he titled. He titled that after the book, but it's all connected now. And like I told you earlier, it's a hot topic because a lot of people are starting a lot of black folks are starting to look in their ancestry and they come to find out, that they're natives. You know what I'm saying? They weren't, of course, they weren't slaves. Could you kind of build on that as well? Talking about specifically how we were all told in fifth grade that we were slaves, you know what I mean? That we all came in on all these boats, but in reality, that's farthest from the truth.
Right. So because of the Conjuring War that was tied to the blood oath contract that was written in the blood of Crispus Attucks, Albert Pike came in to institute the principles of what we know as the Illuminati. And the goal of that was it would take them 200 years to position themselves to take the entire world over. So it was the tribesmen around the world that came together to try to figure out a solution for this white supremacist colonizing agent that was traveling the world seeking to devour nations, right? So Sukarno called the Bangdong Conference so that the original tribes of the earth can come together and figure out solutions. On the heels of the Bangdong Conference, this is when Malcolm started talking about going to the United Nations to argue the issue of human rights, because civil rights and human rights are not the same thing.
when you talk about like Conjuring Wars, because I know we know it is. Could you go like a little bit more detail what a Conjuring War is specifically?
So they use the principles of magic, and in the principles of magic, the magicians challenge each other to use their psychic ability, their craft abilities to conquer in the wars. A good example for you to do a study to understand what I mean by priest wars, you have to go to the King Tut era dynasty and read the history of Akhenaten and King Tut, right? And when you see that they went from the the Amun to the I-10, and the conflict that it was causing, the resolution was to declare a conjure war, right? So it's the same conjure war, it's just a repeat cycle so that we can unravel the larger scale conjure war that the enemy that was in control of it lost control of the conjure. So now they have to call in the big guns, the only one that can figure out what went wrong with the conjure. Well, the thing that went wrong is the ones who was selling the snake poison bought their own poison, and they took that shit too,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it cost them to try to hold us down because they couldn't remember how to help us get back up.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't remember what they had did, how they had infiltrated us and challenged us to the war, feathers versus fezzes,
Mm.
right? So we had to claim they fez by learning. So how did they raise us with poor education?
Mm-hmm.
So the only way that we're gonna ever get out of this situation is we all have to start learning independently of the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere along the line, our elders understood one thing: we cannot allow the enemy to continue to educate our children because they'll never give us the tools and the resources we need to
Mm-hmm.
overcome the problem that we faced with that's
Mm-hmm.
keeping us in this adversarial position,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we being held back on purpose, but what we not realizing is the only thing they holding us back from is claiming our birthright,
Mm-hmm.
because part of the competition was any one of us that claimed the birthright to the land can bring an end to the conjure by exposing the guilty party,
Mm.
right? So Noble Drew Ali didn't expose directly the guilty party,
Mm-hmm.
but he left a series of clues in his works
Mm-hmm.
where those who don't understand the language of the chiefs, they won't never pick up the subtle clues that he leave for
Mm-hmm.
us to know who the adversary is,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, sooner or later, they came to the conclusion the children are gonna have to start educating themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why are they gonna have to do the only way that's gonna happen is if they birth elders back in that was of high learning.
Mm.
Because they're gonna come back in with a genetic disposition to research.
Mm-hmm.
This genetic coding, as they research, is gonna start layer building an image in the subconscious mind that's gonna serve as a surveying tool across the land,
Mm.
right? So when you read all of the legends of off the reservations, right?
Mm-hmm.
They telling the legends that our elders told them when they separated our elders from our community to teach them on the reservation the ways of our people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So they continuously tell the story that the elders told them. They talking about our big mamas with hair like this and skin like this. Those are the elders that was the griots, the storytellers,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the griots and storytellers became researchers like J.A. Rogers,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like Albert Churchward,
Mm-hmm.
like Gerald Massey, people who teach themselves, like Madam H.P. Blavatsky,
Mm-hmm.
right? She
Indeed.
didn't go to these people didn't go to Catholic school or Protestant school.
That's the truth.
They were all educated on the land by experiencing certain things as they encounter new information.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to leave breadcrumbs for Hansel and Gretel because it's going to take a male and a female to figure it out. She going to be the psychic channel. He's going to be the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Pinky in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Pinky is Pinky Tuscadero. Happy Days.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the old lady, Arthur Fonzarelli. Right? The
Mm-hmm.
Fine.
The Fonz.
Right? And the
Mm-hmm.
Fines is notorious for a leather jacket.
Mm-hmm.
A leather jacket means you cool.
Mm-hmm.
And Kanye wore a leather jacket because Big Tookie was cold.
Mm.
And Big Tookie was cold because Big Tookie was froze.
Mm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the man on ice now, a man on fire. He's stomping with the big boots. The newest Kanye walking with the big boots.
Mm-hmm. I've seen it.
The big chief is ready to stomp across the land. He's telling you he's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when we tell the stories of what's taking place on the land, it's because we can communicate with each other by little simple means like what we just did.
Mm-hmm.
We use each other as mirrors to see each other.
Mm.
And this is why the imposter always exposes himself, because in the mirror, he don't look like us
Mm-hmm.
when he faced with us.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't have the same compassion for each other that we got.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have no love for us, but we show them love all the time.
All the time. Yep.
They get jealous and murder us because we starting to shine.
Mm-hmm.
But when they start to shine, we try to prop them up, but they can
Mm-hmm.
only shine so bright because they not us. Right? So we talking about the feathers, the bird clans. This is land that's Tahuti,
Mm-hmm.
right? The home of the bald eagle,
Mm-hmm.
right? The land of the great condor,
Mm-hmm.
home of the thunderbird,
Mm-hmm.
right? The home of the great Quetzalcoatl,
Mm-hmm.
right? The winged serpent, the plumed serpent, right? So what is we talking about? We talking about restoring the chiefs all over the land.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't kick the enemy out using the enemy system because it's designed to never allow us to kick them out. So what is the remedy in law? You got to always have a remedy, right? So if I find a problem, I got to offer up the solution so the clans know what to do and how to organize, right? So when we face with that opposition, what we supposed to do, right? Study the problem till you find the solution and report the solution to the clans. The only way to get the enemy off our land is to use our system. Our system is designed to empower us. When we are empowered, the enemy cannot stand in our presence. And they are aware of this. And that's why they want us to always believe we are powerless. Keep playing on our emotions because as a spiritual people, we don't learn to read our emotions. We get absorbed up into the spiritual stimulation of emotionalism. Right? But when we go back to our old ways, we can't be religious.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Spiritual people can't be religious. They can't be locked into a fixed doctrine. Right? Because they realize that you have a right to be right. According to how you see the world out your eyes. That's your right. I can't take that from you.
Your perspective, yep.
Yeah. And I got a right to see the world how I see it. You got a right to agree or disagree with me. And I got a right to agree or disagree with you. It's not personal. I'm supposed to be my own man. And if you offer something that goes against who I am as a man, I have to turn you down. Right?
Yep.
My training teaches me that I can never lose if I support my brother in a righteous endeavor.
I did.
So in the literature of the growth and development nation, it tells us to aid and assist any and all righteous brother in any and all righteous endeavors.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this is what I'm taught. The righteous endeavor now is to inform the people that if we revert back to our ways, go back to our tribal structures, start tribing back up. We already been tribing up. We just didn't know it because they villainized our tribes and called them gangs. They villainized our leaders under COINTELPRO and murdered them, locked them up, and what you call neutralized them. They told you what they was going to do. In the COINTELPRO document, it tell you they was going to kill Martin, they was going to kill Malcolm, and they didn't give a fuck about Elijah because his ass was old. It's right in the mission statement. And what they do, they killed Martin, they killed Malcolm, and they didn't give a fuck about Elijah until they realized that even though he was old, his influence was great. Then they tried to poison him. And that's why they keep saying Elijah Muhammad not dead. We learned the art of war too, motherfucker. You ain't the only one to understand the art of war. We know how to use the wiles of war from the perspective of the wise general. We Hannibal in this bitch. Fuck your Alexander. Right? We Muhammad Ahmed.
Mm-hmm.
We don't give a damn about your Napoleon.
Mm-hmm.
We Toussaint L'Ouverture. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Fuck your Constantine.
Mm-hmm.
So they minimize our great accomplishments and they over sensationalize the accomplishments of lesser men to give them greater status in the psyche of the people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the people that's behind the scenes gave us Winston Churchill, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? These are the people behind the scenes told us they was the leader.
Mm-hmm.
But they not taking care of us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And every time we tried to take care of our own, they took the leadership out so that we didn't know what the fuck we was doing.
Mm-hmm.
In our culture, the one who leads the way takes the lead.
Mm-hmm.
If you know the path, you got to take the lead.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense to have somebody who doesn't know the path take the lead when there's somebody who know where they're going already there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because now you're going to be stumbling down the path following somebody who's doing guesswork.
Mm-hmm.
But the motherfucker that know the way standing back there acting like he don't know nothing. Right?
So, you said something very interesting that I wanted to go a little bit deeper into. Dealing with the spell of sleep, or like Dr. York called the spell of Leviathan, and Kingu, yeah. And dealing with, you were breaking something down. You were saying like there was like something similar to like a CERN, like they have over there in Switzerland,
right.
whatever, that CERN machine. Could you kind of break that down a little bit more as far as dealing with how
we
that
didn't used to have to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
The CERN machine collapses the fourth dimension in on the third dimension.
Mm-hmm.
So we living in two dimensions simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you pull energy in two opposing directions? It loses power, right?
Mm-hmm. Like a magnet, like yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So once it loses power, neither side of it, it's like taking one of the batteries out of a remote control and trying to change the channel.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, when you put them together, when you learn how to use your subconscious mind consciously, that's when you awake in the dream.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they used a collider similar to CERN.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal was to trap the gods. That's what they said they was doing.
Mm.
And the gods they was trying to trap was the divine feminine beings that would take form periodically as fairies, as water sprites, fire sprites, mermaids, what we call mythical creatures.
Mm-hmm.
When they collapsed the fourth into the third, everybody now at a certain energy frequency has to take the DNA structure of the human being, which is the highest developed physical form on the planet.
Got you. So I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, going back to the land, because when I first got the information, it was back. My first lecture I ever saw was Ivan Van Sertima in actually Richmond, Virginia. They came before Columbus. He was doing a lecture on that. I went through, Bobby Hemmett, all these individuals in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? Um, Eventually, I got to Dr. York. You know what I'm saying? But once I got into the information, I started realizing, especially more so now, that there was a timeline, like procession of these beings. You know, Noble Dry Ali. Um, I'll even say Master Farad Muhammad. I keep on saying Yahweh Ben Yah. You know what I'm saying? It didn't even matter. There was always
So
somebody else.
yeah, it's a consistent uh passing
Hmm.
of the message
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
from
Could
one
you break that
person.
down?
Right. So it's like playing a game.
Hmm.
Right. They just call it the game of the gods. Right. So it's part of fifth dimensional galactic chess. All of the leaders on the land have to put all of the grievances out in the public. And all of the upcoming chiefs have to work on a part of the problem until they can solve all of the problems presented by the elders that came before them. So this is why Noble Drew Ali said, I'm gonna leave these people in power long enough for y'all to learn how to run a government, because they had to give us a series of different contexts in which to work together in order to change the paradigm and to use our structure to remove the legal fiction on the land.
So the procession. Okay, and is there a backstory to it that connects all of them? You know what I'm saying? Is there a story that
Yep.
connects? Yeah.
So
Could you
they
please?
all
Uh,
connected by signs and symbols,
mm-hmm,
by what we call left bumps and right bumps.
mm-hmm,
So in the early 1900s, what's my man name? W.B. Du Bois was arguing um, education over being industrious with man, I can't think of my man name right now. It wasn't Frederick Douglass. It was anyway, they was arguing over whether the solution to our condition was education,
mm-hmm,
which was the position of Du Bois.
mm-hmm.
And the other brother position was we needed to be industrious and work generating some kind of economic upswing for the collective